Summary. Talk to me about this year. What are the big moments for you this year for the company?
The first moment, which we just announced last week, we signed a joint venture with Chiftai, which is a mining contractor in the Kyrgyz Republic. And that is a massive, massive step forward in the development of Kyrgyz assets in two ways. Number one, it de-risks the first project, Tulkubash, which is a simple heap leach operation that requires $130 million to be built and produce 100,000 ounces. And need 2 construction seasons to be built. We already invested around $30 million into this project. We built access road, we built camp, etc. And now Chiftai comes in, they agreed to buy 12.5% in our Kyrgyz assets for $13.5 million. So just in broad strokes, we invested 30, Chiftai comes in, they will invest another 30 plus. The remaining 100, which is required to build the project, we now should be in a position to raise via the project finance. So that's a process we're starting now. The Chiftai agreement unlocks the start of the construction of this project.
So when you say construction finance, obviously, I'm sorry, you need to update. Is it a DFS stage?
We have the feasibility study, which was published last year. We are going to update it now, given the fact that we've done a lot of drilling last year. We increased our resources by 67%. Last year. We plan to do more drilling this year, but already on the basis of new gold, which we found last year, by the way, at a great rate of $11 per ounce of found gold, which is great metrics. So we are going to use these new resources to convert them into reserves and produce an updated feasibility study, probably middle of the second quarter of this year, which will be the basis for us raising the debt funding for the project. Now that we have Chiftai as an equity partner, they are investing in equity, and the rest will be raised more or less in debt, which is another good example of how we approach development of our company with a minimal dilution to Chaarat shareholders.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested because you seem quite keen on debt and you're anti-dilutionary, and I know the board is also buying a lot of shares themselves, so you're very confident what the future looks like.
Myself, yes.
I heard. So, but when you're looking at construction, debt, finance, you're AIM listed, but where are you looking for that money? In London, or are you looking in Asia?
First of all, there are some multilateral global institutions which are keen to invest and provide debt funding for the new projects in places like Kyrgyzstan. So those are very much on our radar.
Or EBRD type people, maybe?
That type of similar institutions, yes. But they are also traditional project finance banks who look at the basic metrics. They look at the equity. Now we have 60 million of equity, 30 we invested, plus 30 from Chiftai, and the remaining 100 can be simply or based on the project metrics. We should be in a position to raise it through that. So what we've done this year, talking about 2019, we started that with this major milestone in the development of the first project in the Kyrgyz Republic, which should enable us to get to the first gold pour in 2021. So by that time, we will have our total production, including Armenia and Kyrgyz Republic, of 160,000-170,000 ounces, which is also going to be a massive step for us. But also importantly, what that investment by Chiftai joint venture we signed is doing for Chaarat is crystallizing the value of Kyrgyz assets. So today, if you look at our market cap and the debt, the market cap is around 100 million pounds. 140 million US dollars. Debt is 80 million, so total enterprise value is 220. Chiftai Investments validates the value of Kyrgyz assets at 250 million US dollars because they are buying 12.5% for 31.5 million. You do simple math, right? So this is just the Kyrgyz assets. the NPV of Kapan is at least 100 million. So we are 40-50% undervalued versus the verified value of two assets.
So again, you can work numbers in a number of ways, but if I look at your share price, it's been pretty good, pretty level for the last 12 months. Again, unusual in the market last year.
It was didn't trade for 6 months of last year.
True.
Right.
But we see the static.
But trend is good.
Trend is good. Trend is good. But if I look at the way that you're trying to build this company out, I think you've mentioned in previous pieces, you're looking at acquisitions. M&A is a big part of the way you grow going forward. You know, the Armenian asset is its producer. It's you know, reasonable valuation, but it's not significant. What is your strategy there? What type of companies are you going for? Lots of small companies to build a portfolio across the region, or are you going for going to hit the ball out of the park and get a big boy on board?
Number one, we're looking at producing assets.
Right.
Number two, we're looking at producing assets with a good geology and upside potential in terms of exploration and operational improvements, as I mentioned to you before. It's very simple. We're very systematic in our M&A approach. We do, based on those criteria, we look at 3 regions, which is Central Asia, that's Kyrgyz Republic, where we're already present, plus Kazakhstan, maybe Uzbekistan at some point when they start fully open. They're in the beginning of that process, because they are on the same Tanshan gold belt. Armenia, where we are already, obviously we will look at things around where we can have synergies, which I also mentioned to you. And the third leg or third cluster is likely to be in Russia, where we see a lot of producing assets undervalued, given the perceived risk which is now applied to the Russian assets, but producing at great cash costs. So in terms of the size of the opportunities we're looking at, we have a pipeline of 12, 15 different opportunities, of which 3 are active at the moment, and we need to add 2 more in the category of active to ensure we close at least one this year. Some of them are transformational, which means they're bigger than us. Some of them are add-ons, like Kapan.
Sure.
We will be able to tell the markets what we do once we sign a term sheet with one of them. But again, the idea of doing deals at a minimal dilution to shareholders is very core to us, because we're all shareholders. That's the way we think, and that's the way we evaluate opportunities.
Yeah.
Typically, you would see junior miner raising tons of money to develop the project and diluting the existing shareholders to very small numbers. For us, it's a matter of philosophy. So what we did is we instituted an incentive scheme whereby we are not getting paid any cash bonuses for those first 3 years. Instead, we're getting in shares, restricted shares and options. So no way we are going to do any diluted share issue to fund any other acquisitions. If anything, whatever we do to buy the new assets, we believe the deal has to stack up on its own, and it has to be able to attract investments, because the deal has to be good. And then we'll fund it through a combination of debt and equity. But just to give you an indication of where we think we are heading to, the management options, which is disclosed in the prospectus, is 42p per share. So it would not make sense for us to do a deal of anything below that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a phrase earlier on, perception of geopolitical risk. Do you think you're benefiting from the fact that maybe you're going into countries where others fear to tread? I mean, Armenia is a difficult jurisdiction.
Armenia is a wonderful jurisdiction. Yeah, Kyrgyz Republic is a terrific jurisdiction.
Try and get funding for it if you're a UK team. I think they would argue differently. That
is true, and for people who sit on the other side of the Hudson River and read Wall Street Journal in the morning, we're probably in a funny jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But the risk always have a return characteristic to that. We are benefiting from the fact that perceived risk, i.e. if you read some mainstream media, is higher than a real risk on the ground. And the way you mitigate the real risk on the ground is, number one, having the team with experience on this part of the world.